you're spending the most amount of money you'll spend on one thing in your lifetime. And why should that be an experience you hate? It should be an experience you love. This is where it goes in finding the right person on your end to work with too, because she had told the person drawing her plans multiple times, I hate my master bathroom. I hate my master bedroom. Can we change it? And he just said, no. I've seen enough plans where the people drew them with like, this is what I think you want. And they don't listen to their client. But when they moved into their house, their neighbors came over and said, well, we wanted that in our house. How did you get your builder to do that? And they said, we just asked him. Yeah, that's exactly what they said. We just asked him and he said, okay. And he did it. And here she is in a $4 million house. And the only thing she's talking about to everybody is, I don't have my pot filler that I wanted. And I can't even think of the cost that would offset that for me. I would tear everything apart to get that pot filler in there.
Welcome to Not a Licensed Architect, the podcast for residential designers out there doing the real work without the license and sometimes without the credit. I'm your host, Stephanie Thatcher. And if you've ever felt like you should be licensed to be taken seriously, but you're still showing up every day, designing real homes that real people actually live in, this is the show for you. Here, we get honest about the struggles, but even more importantly, we're talking about solutions, better floor plans, smarter business moves, and the confidence to finally own your role in the residential construction industry. So if you're ready to level up, lead your clients like the pro that you are, and finally own the fact that you don't need a license to design incredible homes, this is the podcast you've been looking for. Let's go. Welcome to Not a Licensed Architect podcast. Today on this episode, I have with me Steve Coppieters. He is a general contractor here in my area, Northern Utah. And so he and I have worked together on a couple of projects that we hope will get built someday soon, right? I think so. And Steve, you've always been super awesome to join in on the design process and work with me and with my clients to get the home designed just right. So we're looking forward to your perspective on what goes into a quality floor plan and what builders are looking for. And just kind of a little bit of your background, your history. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So I started working with my dad when I was a kid. He was a general contractor, and it was one of those where we didn't have a choice. In the summers, he just said, you're coming to work. And so we just did it. And it was something I found that I loved doing and enjoyed. And then when I graduated from high school, he didn't have enough work for me to work with him, but my best friend's dad was a general contractor. So I went to work with him and been doing it ever since. So about 32 years now, I've been building houses and working with different companies. Stonegate Homes has been in existence for 19 years now.
And that's your own company?
That's my own company, yeah. So prior to that, I've worked for mostly general contractors who did custom homes. I did
around the state of Utah, right?
All around, yeah. Utah County, Summit County, Park City. And then for a while, I went and built high volume production housing in mostly Salt Lake. We were expanding into Utah County and Davis County at the time that they decided to pull out of Utah. So they left, and I just decided to go back to custom homes. And so I've been exposed to every type of building, from small, tiny bathroom remodels up to the homes in Park City we did were 13, 20 million. So I've had a chance to touch it. Yeah.
Not really small homes, right?
No, yeah. So the great thing is I've had exposure to all of it, including land development, commercial construction. When I was younger, our predominant stuff that I did with my dad was commercial tenant finishes. So I had a chance to do all of it. And the nice part about that, it ties directly with what we're talking about, is the bigger the projects and the commercial projects, you work with both designers and architects. So I've had exposure to all of that over the years. And we settled on residential building because I found that I liked working with clients. I've talked to a lot of superintendents when I was growing up that they said, I hate working with clients because they change their mind all the time and all this. And I found that I liked it, and I got along well with my clients. But the biggest goal that I had, and why I went into and stay with construction, specifically residential construction, is I heard so many people tell me they hated their building experience.
Okay, yeah, right. And we want to change that
Yeah. And so
experience.
is exactly it. And I thought, well, you're spending the most amount of money you'll spend on one thing in your lifetime. And why should that be an experience you hate? It should be an experience you love.
Yeah.
And so we worked really hard on that. And I think we've kind of honed in on how to make sure that experience is good with clients. And
I was thinking about that just the other day again, because I'm like you, I think about that all the time and I want to change that perception for the residential construction industry as a whole. And I was just like, what? It's so sad because obviously the pain of somebody's, situation, or I guess the desire, could be the desire of what they want from their home needs to be so powerful that they're willing to go through that perceived pain.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's exactly it. Because everybody up to the point where they decide to build their own house has told them it's a horrible experience.
Yeah.
Don't do it. It'll stress your marriage. It's financially burdensome, all of these things. And they've heard that forever, or they've even experienced it personally. And so, it is something where I think they're like you. I feel there's a huge way to help that not be the case for everybody, no matter who the builder is or the person drawing their plans. Because again, like I'm sure we're going to talk about, that's the starting basis for all of it and making sure that it goes smoothly.
Right. Okay. So because the things that you just said perfectly align with kind of like my mission and my passion. I call myself, advocate for the homeowners, their front line of defense. Like let's create a good offense so that you don't have to have a defense at all, like, going into this whole process. And I'm literally like one of the first people that they work with. Might not be the first person that they contact, but I'm one of the first professionals in this whole process that people work with. So I feel like I've got to set them up for success. And I know that you think a lot of the same things. So tell me some of the things that you do that you feel like can help to have that shift.
Sometimes they've come to me and they don't know what house they want. And then they say, well, who should I call? And then I tell them who to call. And that is the first step that I take with helping them say, this person will listen to you. This person is, like you said, your advocate. So one of the clients I ended up building for, I met with them. They had some budget constraints. And so I had said, hey, let me help you draw your plans and get it all ready to go. They didn't have plans yet. They had their lot purchased, but no plans. So they said, okay, well, we'll be in touch. Well, a year went by and I didn't hear from them. So I sent them a little email and said, hey, how are things coming? And I said, oh, we have a set of plans. It's great. We're ready to go. Can you reprice it? So I repriced it and they said, okay, it's a little higher than we wanted, but we want you to build it. Let's go forward. So I go in and meet with them, and I always do an initial meeting that says, all right, let's walk through your plans, make sure that I understand everything you want in your house. But again, I was not involved with the design of the house. I didn't look at the plans that they were complete. We get all the way done. I roll up my bundle of stuff. I go to walk out the door, and I said, all right, well, let's go build you a beautiful house. And the wife goes, okay. And I said, whoa.
Yeah, wow.
What's going on?
Telling, right?
Yeah, she goes, I hate my main floor. And I was like,
oh my gosh, after all
of that.
So she was afraid to say anything.
Well, she said to, and this is where it goes in finding the right person on your end to work with too, because she had told the person drawing her plans multiple times, I hate my master bathroom. I hate my master bedroom. Can we change it? And he just said no. So we ended up, I said, well, we're going to push pause for a minute. And then I hired a guy just to redesign the main floor. We left the basement and everything else the same. And we scrambled the main floor, made it all work. And they love their house now.
I mean, so they had to keep stairs on the main floor.
Sure, yeah. And there was some structural stuff.
Like the exterior walls and everything, if you keep all that. So he had to work within parameters then.
Yes. Yeah, we had one beam that we just reached out to the engineer and said, hey, we got to just move this wall a little bit. Does that beam stay the same or does it change? And that was it. But other than that, we just scrambled interior walls to make everything work. And she absolutely loves her house now. But it was, if she hadn't have sighed and just said, oh, I don't like it.
Okay, yeah. If she hadn't sighed and if you hadn't clued in on that one little imperceptible, like, whatever, like if you hadn't picked up on that and taken the time to care enough to ask, everything would have continued on and she would have started out on a bad note to begin with. There was no chance she was going to ever enjoy the process or enjoy the outcome.
Yeah. And that's there. And then as we built the house, we ended up seeing a couple other little things that are exactly that same thing of that well, we asked him not to do this. We asked him to do this. We asked him to do these things. And then there was a couple things. He had a 3-foot eave on the house, but a really steep pitch roof. And I thought, this is going to look like a top hat sitting on top of your house. Are you sure you want a 3-foot eave? And they said, no, we didn't ask him for a 3-foot eave. So this is where it comes down to that listening and finding the right person that is going to listen to you. Because like you said, if your attitude, like you said, matches mine of we're here to help you get what you want,
yep,
and walk you through that process. I've seen enough plans where the people drew them of like, this is what I think you want, and they don't listen to their client. And so listening to the client and catching those little things of like, oh, this was super important to me, or I loved this in my last house, those kind of things,
So, okay. So I want to just kind of like touch on that for just a minute and go a little bit deeper, because I find that I think the general public doesn't quite understand the difference between somebody who can operate CAD and somebody who can draft and somebody who can actually like design. To me, they're all different things,
yes.
And so like, there are some like drafters maybe out there, some people who can operate CAD who will take all the information from the clients and offer no expert feedback.
Yeah.
So somebody might look at them and say, well, they're really good listeners.
Yeah.
So I want to do like a little like but on the end of this listening part, because there's listening, but there's also expert feedback. And so like, if my clients are asking for something, I'll dig in a little bit. If I immediately think it might not be the best solution for them, based on the information that they've given me, I'll dig in a little bit more and ask more about like why and what's the real goal. And here are the challenges I see with what you're presenting. Maybe have you considered this? And I try to give them all these different angles to consider. And so I think that there's just this conversation that needs to happen.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that part of it, I mean, we just did an electrical walkthrough on Friday last week with a client, and they were surprised how many times I said to them, well, how do you want to live in your house? Like, how do you want to use this room? And like,
nobody said that to them up to that point.
And they're just like, well, we don't know because we've never had this house before. And I said, okay, but imagine yourself in this master bedroom, and where do you want the light switch to be? How do you want this to come on? Where do you want these things to do?
Well, and if you're doing a electrical walkthrough, this is after it's framed, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So they can actually be in the space, and I get it that they're not there. There's no furniture and it's not finished out, but they could hopefully be able to project and imagine themselves actually living in that space at that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
But a lot of them don't until they're walking in the house. And so you're asking them, and then, this particular client has never built a custom home before. So there's, as thousands of decisions to be made.
Yeah.
But that, and this to me is where it comes back to providing that information and listening and talking, because that's where, I've got 32 years of experience. So when they look at me and go, well, where would you recommend you put it? Well, I can say, well, over all the homes we've built, we usually put these things here, do this.
Right. Yeah.
And then they're, a lot of times they'll go, well, that sounds good to me. And sometimes they'll go, well, no, like one was where they wanted their rain head. Okay, well, where do you want your rain head? Where are you going to stand in your shower? Like, do you want to stand closer to the shower head? Do you want to stand further away? I mean, so little things like that.
Yep.
That can be put on a set of plans, but often is hard to portray on a set of plans. And
rain head location and height and different things. That is really hard. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is that that's what I want to make sure that a good set of plans is the best way to start a house, but there has to be that collaborative work with the client and with talking. And it, like I said, it starts, like you said too, it starts with you guys having that conversation of, this is your laundry room. How do you want your laundry room to function? Mm-hmm. And it might be the first time that they get to choose how a laundry room actually does function and what they liked about past ones and what they like about this one. And so, but yeah, like you said, that you having the experience to say, well, I've drawn 10,000 plans and this is the average, what we normally do. And then you get the person that'll go to the extreme, and you'll get the people who are like, well, that's bigger than I need. I only want a small one or whatever. So you get the extremes of both, but you're going to have out of those 10,000 plans you've drawn, you're going to have a pretty good feel for what the average person does.
Yep. Kind of denominators and what kind of the industry is, asking for at the moment, kind of the trends. And I hate to use the word trend, but just the things that people, the things that you see that kind of like, they form kind of a standard or a consensus. You know what I mean? It's just like, this is what I usually see people do.
Yeah.
I'm sure you experienced that too.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. I love it. Those are such good qualities. Okay. I want to go back a little bit too. I know this doesn't really have anything to do with plans, but I do think that I think it is important to talk about because you chose residential because you found that you enjoyed working with clients. And I can't tell you how many design professionals that I've encountered or, like rubbed shoulders with in the industry, whether it's a Facebook group or my peers or at conferences or whatever, where they just complain about the homeowner so much. And like, that is like a thorn in their side nonstop and they can't get over it. And I just wonder, what do you think it is that makes it so that you have a different experience? I have a different experience. My experience is similar to yours. I literally, most of my clients turn into friends.
Yeah.
I'll go hiking with them or whatever it is. Just like, I don't understand, the people who just loathe their clients.
Yeah.
So how do you do it?
Well, for me, it started when I got put as a superintendent. I was 21 years old. I looked like I was 16. Like nobody believed me when I said I was in charge of a job site. But one of the things I learned from the guy I worked for at the time is we will do whatever the client wants us to do. And so as long as and I kind of wrote this down as like, if you'll give us the time and the money, we'll build you whatever you want. Like there's no restrictions on it. We'll figure it out. And that became very true in Park City.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because they were all about, well, this is what I want. I don't care what it costs. But then to translate that to a client that does need to care about what it costs, it became apparent to me very young was to listen to what they're saying. And there was a lady, her house had burned down. We were rebuilding her house for her. And she was probably late 70s. We were rebuilding this house and she chose strawberry red carpet through her whole house.
Oh my God.
Loved it. We put it in and she stood in the entry and she was, like a grandma. She was like rubbing my shoulder and said, "Steve, don't you just love this carpet?"
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I said, "Neola, if you love it, I love it." And to me, that was the first time, she was almost in tears about how beautiful this carpet was to her. And the last thing I wanted to do was squash that.
Right.
So it really hit to me that like you said, I'll make every recommendation I can to say this is what works and what doesn't work. Mm-hmm. But if you want to do that and it's legal and code wise, I can do it for you, then we'll do it. Because one of the phrases I learned in the production, when we were doing production housing, because everybody, when you're designing a set of plans that has to fit 95% of the public, you have to take that, well, how would I live in this house? You're not living in the house. And so one of the phrases that in our department we had was, we're not cooking the burger to eat. And I tried to remember that as we talk with clients is, this isn't my kitchen.
Yeah.
That particular client, we did the electrical walk. We had 54 inches between the range and the island.
Okay.
And he wanted 60.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, I've got to move a duct and I've got to do a couple little things. And he's like, yeah, but I really want that. Okay. Like we'll make sure that happens for you.
You told him what the parameters were, what the restrictions were, what you needed to do, and he approved. And so then you go and you execute, right?
Yeah. And it's not mine. He was like, well, I just feel like it's going to be tight. Well, 54 inches isn't going to be tight, but in his mind,
most people, yeah. Some people have a different size bubble.
Well, that's exactly what it was. But even since being here in the Valley, one of the first homes I built was a spec home because I thought, well, I just got to build something so people can see what I can build. And so I was building a house and we got all the way done. The clients loved it. And again, they're one of my closest friends up here in the Valley, and they're constantly referring people to me because they had a great experience. But when they moved into their house, their neighbors came over and said, well, we wanted that in our house. How did you get your builder to do that? And they said,
We
well,
asked.
we just asked him. Yeah, it's exactly what they said. We just asked him and he said, okay. And he did it. And they said, we asked and asked our builder and they kept telling us no. And so my client said, why would a builder tell their client no? Yeah. And it's exactly that, is that they either get frustrated with a client, they either don't know how to do the thing, or they just, it disrupts their schedule so badly that they're just like, nope, you can't change anything.
Or just they are just stubborn and they like to do things only this certain way. Yeah. I had a builder once who he didn't like the fact that the plan that he was working on, that I had designed, that had two different pitches on the roof. So front to back was one pitch and the sides were another pitch on this hipped roof. And I'm like, but you can make it work. You just have to do the math. And to be fair, I don't do the math to make those fascias line up and stuff. But I'm like, I know it can be done. And he's like, but, and to his point, he's like, you're not the one up there doing it. And I get it, but it can be done. Don't tell your clients it can't be done.
Yeah.
If it's not something that you're willing to do, don't take on that kind of job.
That, and to me, that's as important. Finding the right designer that designs the house you want, but then finding the right builder that builds what you want. Because you could draw the most perfect set of plans, and if that builder talks them out of everything, that's cool, or all those
changes the roof pitch and changes the window sizes and whatever. Totally, yeah.
Because I was going to build a house when I first started. Right after I started that other spec, another guy asked me, hey, this is our family home. Will you help us build this house? So we went through the plans, and then they decided to hire somebody else who was a family member. And he called me about halfway through construction, and he said, hey, he won't do stucco on the house, and we really want stucco. And he said, oh, you can't do stucco in Cache Valley. And then he said, well, we had this metal roof design on the back patio. And he says, well, you can't do metal in Cache Valley. And he said, but I see them all over the place. I see stucco all over the place. And I said, well, we do metal roofs and stucco in Park City. So if we can do it up in Park City, there's no reason it can't be done in Cache Valley. But he was frustrated that everything he wanted that was this design feature in his house, the builder was trying to talk him out of, and he didn't understand why. And we talked a little bit about that. But that aspect of having somebody that can do what you design, and like you said, there's imperfections in everything. That's one of the other phrases I tell my clients all the time, is that you have a bunch of average, normal people who are going to make mistakes, and you have about 40 of them, 40 companies on your house that are going to work. Well, we're going to have problems. It's how we work through those problems. And so that communication line is very important. But if the answer is always no, and it doesn't matter then at that point, for your client, if you designed the most beautiful, awesome house and drew a perfect set of plans, if the builder just keeps telling them no on everything,
Well, and the sad thing is they'll believe it because they're trusting that expert, that professional. Yes. And so I have this policy. It's basically a yes policy. It's just like, I'll try to say yes to everything I can, and it might be a yes, we can do that. This is what it's going to entail, or yes, that can happen in 6 months, or, like whatever. There might be clauses behind it.
Yeah.
But typically, because we've all seen the structures that are in the world, thank you, Instagram, and thank you, the internet. Like, we see all the things that are out there. And so what a lot of our clients might not understand is that maybe we do have some constraints, and we're not going to build, a pier house in Cache Valley because we're not near the ocean and we don't have hurricanes and tidal surges to deal with and stuff like that. But so we as the experts need to help our clients understand what the parameters are, what the restrictions are, and how we're going to solve for those restrictions and guidelines and stuff. And so to me, it's just like the story I tell, it's a pretty recent one for me, but I've had basal cell carcinoma, so a little skin cancer on my face, right here at my temple. It was right at the hairline, and surgery day was scheduled, and I went in. They're gonna cut it out, and first of all, the procedure that they were doing, I was under the impression that it was a different thing. like that there was no incision. It was a different thing.
Yeah.
And so they had to re-educate with me on what was happening. And so I'm like, okay. And this is the day of, I'm like literally in the chair to get this procedure done, that they're educating me on what's happening. So there's a fail somewhere in the back in the past of like, how did I not know? I'd had the same procedures I thought before. And so somewhere along the line, some design profession, or not design, some professional in this industry had either failed to inform me correctly or I had failed to understand.
Yeah.
Right. And so anyway, I'm sitting there, they remove it, everything comes back clean, everything's good. And so it's time to stitch me up. And they just start working. And I'm like, because I'm, fully awake. It's just local anesthetic. It's not a big deal. And I finally was like, so what are you doing? And they're like, oh, well, because it's a circle and we can't pull together a circle, we have to elongate the incision into an oval. And so that's what we're doing. And I'm like, legit, I ended up with 11 stitches.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
8 that were on the surface. Like the incision was over an inch long out of they had told me that the amount that they removed was a 1/4 inch diameter. So it went from a 1/4 inch to over an inch. Now, if I had only heard a 1/4 of an inch and I hadn't asked about what more is happening now, can you imagine? Like, I was shocked as it was.
Yeah.
When I saw that, all those stitches and like, I'm going to be Frankenstein. Oh no. Like all these worries. It's like right here. And they did it horizontally. Why didn't they do it vertically? I had all these questions, all these frustrations, all the things. And I'm like, there was just not enough information coming to me from the professional, and I didn't know all the right questions to ask. I thought I knew.
Yeah.
And so I just look at that. I take that example as just like, I'm the person who knows the most. And Dave Ramsey says it best, like hire the professional who has the heart of a teacher. And so I try to really take that to heart and be the one who's educating my clients as much as possible without, overloading them with technical terms and lingo from the industry and whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that you do similar things where it's just like, it's that listening, it's that asking, it's that back and forth. How are we going to solve this problem? It's having a problem-solving mindset.
Yeah.
Is how I look at that.
Yeah, and for sure. And letting them know there's going to be problems. There's going to be conflicts on the plans. There's going to be subs that don't follow the plans. There's going to be things that change that nobody thought about, or that one person thought about, but in their perspective, it changed how the other thing needed to work.
Yep. So you're saying it's kind of like this living, breathing thing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And that's, to me, that's where you have to have the right team. You have to find people who, even if because one of your questions that you asked was, people starting out, and our industry is starting like, there's all kinds of new people, and especially here in the Valley, I'm running into probably a new general contractor at least once a week, or every 2 a week, even sometimes. And so that's one of those where and I've told them, one, join the Home Builders Association. I firmly believe that that's a good way to get support, but also finding somebody who's willing to hey, you've been doing this a long time. How did you get started? And ask them. And so if I get a chance to talk to anybody, plan wise, building wise, subcontractors, I try to share with them what I've seen that works to be successful, so that they can become successful at that. And one of those is having a safe place to ask those questions of hey, what did you do? How did you get started in this? And my daughter was going to follow in your footsteps, and she's pushed pause on that for a little bit, but it's one of those where, I was like, go talk to Stephanie. She did exactly what you want to go do. She's already done it. Yeah. And she's got programs set up. She can tell you how to do it. But the biggest thing is somebody in your position helping a plan designer, or in my position, helping a young builder, is being able to say, here's some stumbling blocks I crossed. Try to avoid those things, learn to set your ego aside. I mean, one of the hardest things I've ever done is let myself be yelled at by a homeowner, or not even be yelled at. They were just disappointed something happened to the way it was.
Let them think less of you than you thought you were. Like, let them think less of what happened or the experience or whatever, maybe even you, than what you thought you were providing.
Yeah.
And have the humility to listen and take that feedback and say, like, have a true, honest look at what the situation was or yourself or whatever, and say, like, yeah, could I do better?
Yeah.
Is there some sort of change I can implement moving forward?
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I learned early on is if a client didn't like something and says, well, I'm okay with it, then we usually go back and go, no, what do you want this like to perform like? Because we're going to change it to whatever that is. And every time we've done that, the client has come back at the completion of the project and said, I'm so glad we changed that.
Right.
Because I've told them, I've said, I don't want you to walk out of your master bedroom and come down the hallway and you step into this kitchen and you love your kitchen and you look over and you're disappointed that the fireplace doesn't look the way you want the fireplace to look. I don't want that to happen. So we're going to change whatever we got to change. My brother does trim carpentry, and he was at the end of a house, $4 million house up in Park City. The very end of it, he's doing back base up against the cabinets, and the homeowner was there. And he was like, man, your house has turned out beautiful. And she's like, yeah, it's great. And he's like, what's wrong? And he's like, well, he forgot my pot filler. So a $4 million house.
Over a pot filler.
And she told him after drywall, and he said, it's going to be too difficult. You'll be fine. You don't really want a pot filler, and talked her out of it. And here she is in a $4 million house. And the only thing she's talking about to everybody is, I don't have my pot filler that I wanted. And I can't even think of the cost that would offset that for me. I would tear everything apart to get that pot filler in there for her.
Literally, to me, it's one thing if she had said, gosh, I really wish I had done, 10-foot ceilings.
Yeah.
That's something different. That's a completely different ballpark instead of a pot filler, or even after drywall.
Yeah. And it wasn't her fault. She had said she wanted a pot filler. It was the builder's fault. And that to me was like, that is a fatal error.
Yeah.
And so that being able to listen and set your ego aside, some of the other people I follow on Instagram that are builders have said that too, is if you make a mistake, admit it early and address it.
Okay, so one of the best, this is a tip that I would give to anybody out there. One of the things that I've learned throughout my experience, especially being an entrepreneur, is like, if you want your clients to not come at you, be the first one to point out your mistakes.
Yeah.
Like, you point it out, you bring it up, you call yourself out.
Yeah.
The wind is totally gone out from their sails. Like, they now have nothing that they can come at you with.
Yeah.
If you can say, oh, I really did, I failed to see, and I'm so sorry. And I was working on fixing that because I noticed, you will have a client who does not ever complain.
Yeah.
If you can call yourself out loud to your clients.
Yeah. Well, one of the things along those lines that we do when I first started in cell phones, I'm old enough that cell phones weren't even something that we did at the beginning, talkies, if you can believe it.
Nice.
But when we got cell phones, I gave all of my clients my cell phone number, and all these other superintendents were like, you're nuts. Like, they're going to call you all the time. And I said, I want my client to call me. I don't want them to feel like I'm not on their side. And in the 32 years of doing this, probably 28 of those with a cell phone or whatever, 25. I've only had one client. He was an engineer, and he had just had lots of questions about construction. He's the only one that's ever abused that. And it was a simple conversation of, hey, I appreciate that you got lots of questions. Please don't call me on Sunday and ask me those questions. And he stopped. But other than that, I have never had a client abuse my cell phone number. Every single one of them.
And it wasn't that you weren't willing to take his call or answer his questions. It was just that you had a boundary that you needed to protect, because you do still have a life outside of your business and your work, and you had to protect that boundary. And I think that that's absolutely critical. I think that is the professional that you want to work with. Yeah. You want to work with somebody who is in charge of, and they know enough to protect themselves. And because guess what? If they're going to protect themselves, then that means they're going to protect you too, probably. Yeah. Well, and so it's good. To me, it demonstrates a high level of ethics and values. Of course, the way that you present that, you could just be a real jerk about it and be like, I'm never going to take your call. Quit calling me on Sundays. Like, I don't know. I can't even imagine how you can react horribly, but I know that people do. And
Yeah.
so it's just saying, like, I'm glad to take your call. I'm glad to answer your questions. Will you please, like, just let's limit it to business hours
Yeah.
or weekdays or
And
whatever,
and that's
Like, don't call
exactly
me
what,
at 11 p.m. either.
yeah. And that's exactly what he did, and and again, he was an engineer and he was just constantly thinking about his house. And
Like,
so,
take a list of
yeah,
the questions you have.
yeah.
Shoot me an email
But
on
that, to me, that
Sundays.
comes back to also understanding your client. Like, I knew because he was an engineer, details were extremely important to him.
Yeah.
And so, but like you said, it was that one thing, and like it was a simple, like, hey, I really appreciate you reaching out. We'll address all of these things on Monday. It's hard for me to focus on family time if I'm reading emails, even though they weren't like complaining emails, they were just questions.
Yeah.
But it's like, hey, I'd like to focus on my family. And he never did it again. But it was that
Did he
kind
call or did he email you?
of texted.
He
And it was just
texted.
this list of questions for texting. And because I have my phone with me most of the time, that
You looked at it.
I look at it and then I start thinking about it and then I'm doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
But it was, and like you said earlier, most of the questions he was asking me were already things I was aware of. He just wasn't aware of them. He didn't understand what was happening.
Gotcha. Yeah.
He freaked out about a pipe. He thought, well, I've got this extra pipe and they were going to pour the concrete tomorrow. And so I ran out there on a Sunday morning to make sure they didn't have a pipe in the wrong place. And it was just a toilet flange. And he just didn't understand what the toilet flange was. So, but that's one case in 32 years. Do you know what I mean? And so
right.
I have found that a client appreciates being able to have access to you and talk to you, and in those parameters of what's professionally reasonable. But like I've got one client right now, he's a CEO of a large corporation and he's all over the world. And he might be in Saudi Arabia and need to text me, and it's 7
4
o'clock.
p.m. his time, but it's like 4 a.m. your time or something.
And so like clients like that, I understand, like, you respond to me when you can, and I will respond to you when I can.
Yep.
And if it's urgent, then I'll figure out what to do. But those are rare clients. Most clients are just like you and me. They work 9 to 5 and they have their family life and they want it.
Yep. Well, and if you're managing the project well, which you are, you're not just only showing up on the job site once a week or whatever, and leaving your subcontractors to figure things out on their own. Like, if you are an engaged and an interactive general contractor, then most of the stuff is going to be handled anyway. And so it's not like it's anything that is new to you or disruptive to the whole flow of the project or anything like that. So it's fine. I think, again, that proactive approach where it's just like you go in and you're going to see the problem. If you're looking for the problems and you're there to troubleshoot and all that stuff all along the way, then most likely there won't be problems. And so I think that the builder or the professional who does allow and offer, like, here's my personal contact information stuff, you can probably feel pretty good and pretty confident that that person has things under control. The way I look at it is I want to have all of my professionals that I work with in this experience to have their processes so locked down that they will give me guidelines and parameters and expectations and, homework in advance. And like, they're going to have structure in place. Yeah. And so all I need to do is come into the equation and follow that structure, that process, that timeline, everything. And he's got a spot for me in the process and I just slide right in.
Yeah. And I think that, because even if, if you have an interior designer involved and then the design professional for the plans and then your builder, like, even if they, like I said, if they came to me first, then I still tell them, like, this is your house. So don't be afraid to say what you're thinking. Right. Don't be afraid to tell the designer, well, I don't really like that tile. Or like, I want my door to face the other way. Okay, well, that's not how we normally do it. But if you really want it because you have a reason, that's okay. Like, don't be afraid to say those things. Because some people, like you said, some people won't say those things. And then it gets all the way to the point where it's either expensive to change, you can't change it, or, and then that level of frustration is there. And so I always tell my clients, like, don't hesitate to tell me if something's bugging you. I don't want you to go through the weekend stewing about it.
And I don't want you to get to a place where it's gone on long enough in your own head, you haven't verbalized it, and you thought you could just work through it emotionally, but you find yourself telling your friend and telling your mom and like venting to everybody else but me, the person who can solve it.
Yeah, and exactly. Because again, you want to solve the problem.
Right.
And that's, and if you know about it, you can solve it. And that's the part. I mean, like I said, you tell that to your client of like, I can solve anything you tell me you want me to solve. I just have to know about it. And a lot of times you already know about it. Like you said, you'll see it and go, oh yeah, I gotta catch that. I gotta fix that or whatever it might be. But having that comfortability that your client has with you to know, I can call Stephanie. She's not going to get irritated about me calling her. I can call Steve and he's not going to be upset that I asked him a question about my house. And, because I honestly try to make sure that they do feel comfortable, like these homeowners doing the walkthrough. It's the first time they've ever gotten to make those decisions.
Yeah.
So I can't expect them to have 32 years of experience like I have and know exactly, well, this is what I would do, but they also knew at some point they were laughing because I said, well, where do you want it? And then they would go, well, what about over there? And then I would say, well, in the past we've put them here. And then they just laughed and they said, well, Steve, why don't you tell us first where you think we should put it? And then we will tell you if we don't agree with that.
That's fair.
Yeah. And I realized, all right, well, they do want more coaching and help.
There you go. That's a good word.
So, yeah.
Yep, that's a good word. Okay, so quickly, what has been your experience? Because you've worked, like you said, on these big projects and big, homes and whatever, and even the TI stuff. You probably have experienced, floor plans and stuff that have come from a licensed architect or from an architectural firm or whatever.
Yeah.
What are the biggest disparities that you see between a professional like that and somebody like me who is not licensed, but does, these luxury floor plans?
Yeah. So
what am I missing? I guess that's the question I'm asking.
Well, so, and part of it, I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about this because it's not the first time I've been asked this question. We did that Ask a Builder thing with the Home Builders Association. And that was one of the first questions that was asked was, should I hire a designer or should I hire an architect? And so as we talked with those people at that meeting about that, and as I've thought about it over the years, architects have a very different role when they start looking at a plan. They're looking at it from the standpoint of I'm on the hook from the minute we start till the minute it's done.
And done meaning like until we give the homeowners the keys.
Yeah.
Or the owner of this structure, the keys, and they've got certificate of occupancy.
Yeah.
That's their done. That's not my done.
Yeah. Well, they'll go and meet with the HVAC guy and they'll design the HVAC system. Right. They'll design, this is where the HVAC system is going to go. And this is where the plumbing is going to go. And this is, and we did a commercial project in Salt Lake and the architect coordinated all of those professional, an HVAC design company. And they weren't even the ones that were going to install it, but he brought them in and they designed the system. And then the installers bid the system and fire sprinkler systems. And they'll do depending on what it is. But even in residential, we've had some where the residents, they needed to do some public road analysis where like, do we have enough parking? And so
the architect helped to coordinate that with a surveyor or with a civil engineer or whatever.
Yeah. They really take it on as this is their project from beginning to end.
And so their fees, just for my listeners who don't know, their fees are massively higher because
very much higher.
They're managing all of that. So they have a really big role that they fulfill.
Yeah. And there's some where the architect has just drawn a set of plans and handed them off and that's it. Their fees are still astronomically higher than a designer, but there are a few that will do that. And they're like, that's it. Like my plans have everything you need, because one of the other aspects that an architect will do, we talked with one in Ogden, they were moving from back east to Utah. And they had an architect they loved back east. And he was a great guy, drew a fantastic set of plans, but he specified everything. He specified
all the hold downs and all the beams,
Well, even just
all the connections and
well, that part of it, but also he specified the exterior siding product. He had this window brand and manufacturer,
so he kind of really went into, did he have an interior designer on staff with him?
No,
or that was just what he did?
That's what he did.
And
so a lot of these architects will specify all of that, because that's the difference. I mean, you look at windows, when we get a normal set of plans, we have to look at it and say, okay, well, what brand of window? Because some windows are half-inch over call out, some are half-inch under call out, some are exactly call out.
Yeah.
So you have to know all of those things. But if you don't know the brand, then you have to decide that before you frame.
Yeah.
And because it changes the framing. But an architect will put all that right on the plan. Here's the detail. He had cross sections of the windows and how we were to do the window sills and tie those together inside and outside.
And was that on a residential home?
That was a residential home.
Okay. So to me, from what I've experienced, most like architects in the Valley here, unless it's like a multi-mega $1 million home, and we're talking probably 20 plus million, I feel like most architects here in our area won't even take on a residential project. Yeah. In fact, I get calls saying, so-and-so from this architectural company referred me to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, I've seen two true architecture plans in the Valley, and they were exactly like you said. They didn't call out windows. They didn't do all of that other stuff. But in Park City, that's exactly what we had. They laid out the land. They had the topography figured out. They had the driveway slopes figured out, like all of that stuff. And all we did was build it. And
so the way that I facilitate that without charging an architect's fees is I encourage my clients to kind of like assemble their team themselves. So I encourage my clients to hire a surveyor who can give us the topography of their land. And I encourage them to hire a good builder, and I encourage them to hire a site designer and, or a landscape designer, an interior designer. So kind of like a very similar team setup to what an architect might bring to the table, either on his own or with his own core group that's like under him or with his firm. And so, but even if you assemble the team yourself, the way that I encourage my clients to do, there is an element of cost savings benefit.
Absolutely.
And from that standpoint, because you are doing the vetting of, and I'll give you recommendations of who I have worked with that I have found good success with and that have a heart of a teacher like you do. And so I will vet some of those professionals for my clients and give them some good recommendations without, I have a policy of no kickbacks and stuff because I want it to be a true, honest referral.
Yeah.
But then you're just paying those individuals one by one instead of as a collective management piece. And so anything else that you can see, like, because I do typically leave off details that some architects might include because of what you just said, because I'm not specifying the window product, or the brand or anything like that. And so I'm not going to add any of those specific details, beams and columns and stuff like that. I let the structural engineer manage some of those things. And then I leave it up to a good builder like you to build it out the way that he sees that fits best the situation.
And that's where I see the biggest difference. The architect, and I've had arguments with architects because they've asked me to do something and I've said it's not physically possible. You're asking me to do something that, yes, you could draw it on paper, but I can't physically build that. And then they've just said, well, if I can make it work on paper, you can make it work in real life. I'm like, well, that's not how things work. Like,
that is not the physical universe that we live in.
Yeah. And so sometimes that's the difference, is because they take ownership or feel like they have ownership of the project from beginning to end, that they don't see a value sometimes, not all the time. Most architects actually really do appreciate a good builder, but they don't always see the value in somebody who said, I've actually built this before and this is how you're going to have to do it. Yeah. And, the architects that I've worked with the most that do listen to me, they will call me and say, hey, Steve, we're thinking about drawing it this way. Do you see any problems with that?
Which, yes, love the collaboration.
Yeah. And that to me is a very important part of it. And some architects will not do that because they feel like it's their name on it. and that needs to be their way, and they don't listen as much and collaborate with the client or the builder, versus most of the designers that I've worked with are happy to have a builder involved. I remember the first time you and I worked together, and I was like, do you mind if I redline the set as plans? And you were like, please. Nobody gives us feedback.
Yeah. Like the more feedback, I can't get better if I don't have feedback. Yeah. Literally, I'm just me and in my own little world, in my universe. So I must have feedback in order to get better.
Well, it's interesting because I had another designer, and I'm not even building the house, but she said, we sent this to the builder, and the builder said, yep, looks good. And then she said, we didn't get any feedback. Mm-hmm. So we're not sure if this works. And so she said, would you just take 30 minutes and go through the plans?
You have been the builder who has given me the best, most feedback.
Well, and I feel like none of us can get better if we don't get some feedback.
Right.
Like, I need to know from my clients and my subs. Like if I'm asking a sub to do something they can't do, I need them to tell me that.
Exactly. Yes. The best feedback I feel like I've ever gotten in my business so far was from clients who had felt frustrated throughout the process, but they didn't tell me until the end. Yeah. And then they were brave enough to open up and say, hey, we were a little confused and we didn't know, we didn't understand, we were frustrated and this seemed weird and out of place and whatever. And I'm like, oh, so all I needed to do was change the way that I communicate with my clients.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
Yeah.
But like, I didn't know. Yeah. And just like, there's all this user experience is different from the provider experience and perspective. Yeah. And so just understanding that. Okay. So 3 quick takeaways.
Okay.
What can you give us in just 3 quick, brief sentences of like what, because I jotted down some notes as we were talking, but what would you say would help to make a really good experience for homeowners? Like what can a design professional do to make that experience better, whether it's good on the plans or just, like the way that they conduct their business?
Yeah, one of the things that when you asked me that question on the little things to think about was one of the things I've seen is the best that you can do, and you do this already, and I don't know very many others that do, but go walk your house that you drew and see what the builder built. Did they build it with the way you drew it? Did they change something in the field? If it changed, why did it change?
Well, and to see it in 3D in real life helps you to see, because that perspective is different than looking at it on a set of plans. Like that plan view, it's different when you're in 3D. Even if you're looking at something in a 3D model on the computer, different in real life. So go walk it.
Yeah, okay. Go walk the house. Then you look at a bedroom and okay, well, I drew that bedroom. Now I'm standing in that bedroom. Is it really as big as I thought it was going to be? Does it give enough room to do everything? Is that closet deep enough that I can swing the door in or out?
And walk it when it's framed and then walk it after it's dry, because drywall actually makes them feel bigger. Yeah. Weird. But okay, number 2.
So collaborating with other designers, not putting your ego aside and saying, hey, I need to get better. What have you done to get better? And to me, that's something we need in this industry as a whole. Builders need to talk to each other, and like even designers and draftsmen, architects, the same, need to tell their builders how to get better too. Mm-hmm. Because I had an architect come to me and he walked through a modern house and he's like, this is an amazing modern house. He said, we couldn't find somebody in the valley. The homeowners picked a builder, and then we had to draw the plans to the skill level of the builder. The other way around. Draw the house for the clients and then have the pick a builder that works. And so that collaborative effort of going back and forth of what can we do to get better? What details do we need to put on a set of plans? But also, walking into a house and going, Mr. Builder, you didn't build that the way I drew it. Is there a reason why? Can you not do it? Or did you just decide not to do it? Because again, that may be a reason why the client comes to you and goes, well, it didn't turn out the way we thought it was going to turn out.
Right. To the builder.
I didn't follow the plan.
Yeah.
And then one of the biggest helps that I think for a builder, from my perspective, is I like to, and it can't always be 100%, but I like to have the plans as 100% as possible at the day we start.
Okay.
Because we end up with changes, and like I've had an interior designer scramble the whole outside of a house, but didn't change brick ledges and that kind of. Now it's built because the subs are going to follow the plans. So I always say the plans are our Bible, and they need to be able to, if no one is there, what's the information they're looking at? And that's it. Because I can't manage by a red line if somebody's.
Yeah, I feel like the less messy the floor plans are, the easier it is to dissect them and find that information, because there's a ton of information on the plans. Even if you keep the plans as sparse as possible and open to interpretation or whatever, like there's still a lot of information that you're trying to translate from the homeowner's, minds to the builder's hammer, how, and you're that translation piece in the middle. So
when I ask all my clients, or not my clients, the subcontractors, when they're like, well, what do we do here? My first comment is always, well, what does the plan say to do? And we look at the plan. And if they're like, well, I looked at the plan and I'm not sure, then we try to figure it out. But half the time, more than half the time, when I say, well, what did the plan say? We go back to the plans and it says right on the plans what they're supposed to do. And so it's that training on our end too, of like, because and to be honest, this is a tell of the thing. Most people expect that the plans are so inaccurate that they just do what they've done on the last house or they've done it before.
Hey, that's fascinating.
So I always tell my subs, like, that's not us. Our plans are accurate. You're going to follow the plans because we've had months of conversations about what's going into these plans. Do not ignore the plans, because they get in that mentality sometimes of just like, oh, we'll just ignore the plans.
Yeah, the plans are just a suggestion. I've actually had a builder who told me that. Plans are just a suggestion. I'm like, what?
No, client paid a lot of money to get it drawn the way they want it. So those are some key things that help a project run more smoothly, be more successful for both you and us and the client. Yep,
that's the ultimate, is have the client have a good experience.
Absolutely.
Yep. Okay, I know they'll have it with you.
Wow, we try hard.
For sure. You're amazing. Thank you so much for your insights and for your feedback and for doing a good job that you do, for looking out for the clients, because to me, like you said at the very beginning, they're spending a lot of money. It's probably the biggest purchase that they're ever going to make in their lifetime. And I appreciate other professionals just like you who care about the clients as much as I do. So
I appreciate it too.
Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. Take care, Steve.
You too.
I'll talk to you later. Bye. Thanks for hanging out with me on Not a Licensed Architect. If you're ready to stop second guessing yourself and start owning your place in this industry, make sure to follow the show and share it with another designer who needs to hear it too. And if you want more real strategies and floor plan tips you can actually use, head on over to dostudios.co for more courses and resources to supercharge your residential design career. Remember, you don't need a license to design a home or a life you're proud of. Thanks for hanging out. We'll catch you next time.